What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy. Welcome back to our Bible study. Okay, then. Leviticus chapter 7. Pretty much just following up where we left off, getting some more details on the offerings that weren't covered before. And it seems like most of these added details are related to the priests and what they do or don't get to eat, and a little bit more just from not their perspective, but maybe a little bit more for them and how they're supposed to do certain things related to these offerings. But anyway, okay, so let's hop right in. Leviticus 7. These are the regulations for the guilt offering, which is most holy. The guilt offering is to be slaughtered in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered, and its blood is to be splashed against the sides of the altar. All its fat shall be offered, the fat tail and the fat that covers the internal organs, both kidneys with the fat on them near the loins, and the long lobe of the liver, which is to be removed with the kidneys. The priest shall burn them on the altar as a food offering presented to the Lord. It is a guilt offering. Any male in a priest's family may eat it, but it must be eaten in the sanctuary area. It is most holy. Okay, so yeah, again, this seems almost more like the first set of commands that God gave regarding these offerings was more so to just the people in general. But then this second set that's, adding more to these offerings and the procedures for them seems to be, targeted specifically at the priests and what they were supposed to do with these offerings. So that's the best explanation I can come up with regarding why it seems to be going back and explaining more things about these offerings that were already talked about. But anyway, yeah, not too much else to say there. So, moving along, I guess. Verse 7. The same law applies to both the sin offering and the guilt offering. They belong to the priest who makes atonement with them. The priest who offers a burnt offering for anyone may keep its hide for himself. Every grain offering baked in an oven or cooked in a pan on a griddle belongs to the priest who offers it. And every grain offering, whether mixed with olive oil or dry, belongs equally to all the sons of Aaron. Okay, so this bit about, saying that the portion of the offering essentially belongs to the priest who is, performing the offering. I mean, each of these offerings probably would not have been enough food on their own to give any significant portion to all of the priests every time. So it makes a little more sense to just kind of have, the priest who's offering it be sort of in charge of, what happens to the food portion of it. I assume they kind of got first dibs on it and then could, share other portions with other priests, which is probably also part of the reason why it specifies in a couple of these cases that, any of the sons of Aaron could eat from these offerings. And I was actually thinking, as I was reading the first section here that basically this idea about the same law applying to both the sin offering and the guilt offering, because I was like, wait, yeah, it mentions both of them being slaughtered where the burnt offering is slaughtered. Yeah. So again, sin offering could also be read as purification offering. I guess rather than looking at what it's trying to atone for, the other way is looking at it as what it is doing. That's positive. These are the regulations for the fellowship offering anyone may present to the Lord. If they offer it as an expression of thankfulness, then along with this thank offering, they are to offer thick loaves made without yeast and with olive oil mixed in. Thin loaves made without yeast and brushed with oil, and thick loaves of the finest flour, well kneaded and with oil mixed in. Along with their fellowship offering of thanksgiving, they are to present an offering with thick loaves of bread made with yeast. They are to bring one of each kind as an offering, a contribution to the Lord. It belongs to the priest who splashes the blood of the fellowship offering against the altar. The meat of their fellowship offering of thanksgiving must be eaten on the day it is offered. They must leave none of it till morning. If they were doing it for this reason, they were also supposed to give an even further portion. It just seems odd to me, though, that like it mentions here, thick loaves made without yeast. Oh, okay. So there were supposed to be 3 different sets of grain used in this, I guess, because it mentions thick loaves without yeast, thin loaves without yeast, and then thick loaves of the finest flour, well kneaded and with oil mixed in. Those ones, I guess, maybe were with yeast. Present an offering with thick loaves of bread made with yeast. I don't know. Anyway, seems like there's quite a bit being offered in this one relative to, other offerings that were mentioned and the requirements thereof. But if you're doing it out of thankfulness, it's likely that there's some abundance being enjoyed there. So, sure, I guess. Also, I mean, grain was probably one of the cheaper, easier things to get a hold of anyway. I think I'm going to move along then to verse 16. If, however, their offering is the result of a vow or is a free will offering, sacrifice shall be eaten on the day they offer it, but anything left over may be eaten on the next day. Any meat of the sacrifice left over till the 3rd day must be burned up. If any meat of the fellowship offering is eaten on the 3rd day, the one who offered it will not be accepted. It will not be reckoned to their credit, for it has become impure. The person who eats any of it will be held responsible. I kind of wonder if, especially in regards to meat being cooked and the fact that, they didn't have very good ways of preserving that, by the 3rd day, it could easily be, spoiling as well. So, there might be a bit of practicality to that, too. But, so, if the offering is for thanks, there's, extra stuff that's supposed to be included with it, and it has to be eaten on the same day that it's offered. But then if it's a free will offering, then it can be kept till the second day and eaten then. And it also doesn't mention the extra, loaves of bread in there as a requirement either. Those may or may not actually still be required, but it doesn't mention that specifically in this case. So I'm not going to jump to any particular conclusions there. Okay, moving on. Verse 19. Meat that touches anything ceremonially unclean must not be eaten. It must be burned up. As for other meat, anyone ceremonially clean may eat it. But if anyone who is unclean eats any meat of the fellowship offering belonging to the Lord, they must be cut off from their people. Anyone who touches something unclean, whether human uncleanness or an unclean animal, or any unclean creature that moves along the ground, and then eats any of the meat of the fellowship offering belonging to the Lord, must be cut off from their people. So, this probably has quite a bit to do with, why the priests put a lot of effort into staying clean, because if they became unclean in any way, they weren't able to, eat any food portions from these offerings until they were clean. And if they didn't wait, they had to be cut off from their people, which not something they would want, especially as priests. Because again, the priests were the only ones who were supposed to be eating anything from these offerings anyway. So, yeah. Oh, hey, Pablito. Real quick footnote here. Few Hebrew manuscripts, Samaritan Pentateuch, Syriac, and Targum, say any unclean creature that moves along the ground, I guess. Most Hebrew manuscripts say any unclean, detestable thing. I assume that's rather than any unclean creature that moves along the ground. Could possibly just mean the same thing anyway. But I guess this wording almost seems to add more specificity to the categories of what was unclean. But anyway, also, not only were the priests not able to partake of an offering meal, for lack of a better way to put it, if they were unclean, but if the meat of the offering became unclean in any way, they weren't supposed to eat it. So basically, nothing unclean was supposed to be involved in the offerings or the consuming thereof. Okay. Moving along to verse 22. The Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, do not eat any of the fat of cattle, sheep, or goats. The fat of an animal found dead or torn by wild animals may be used for any other purpose, but you must not eat it. Anyone who eats the fat of an animal from which a food offering may be presented to the Lord must be cut off from their people. And wherever you live, you must not eat the blood of any bird or animal. Anyone who eats blood must be cut off from their people." Okay, so no fat, no blood. Since animals that were found dead or that were torn by wild animals, as it says here, those types of animals weren't supposed to be used for offerings anyway. So in verse 24, when it talks about that fat being usable for other purposes, that's okay. Which I guess also kind of, because I think the common people might have been able to, eat such animals for themselves, but not the fat, apparently. But feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that. Let me get to that footnote real quick. From which a food offering is presented. Okay, so maybe using the word maybe instead of is almost makes it like, because if you had an animal that was in a good enough condition that it could have been offered, that almost makes it seem like that would apply for this as well, rather than just saying that any of the fat from something that was offered, which is what this wording would have implied. So I believe I was supposed to get into verse 28 next. The Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, anyone who brings a fellowship offering to the Lord is to bring part of it as their sacrifice to the Lord. With their own hands they are to present the food offering to the Lord. They are to bring the fat, together with the breast, and wave the breast before the Lord as a wave offering. The priest shall burn the fat on the altar, but the breast belongs to Aaron and his sons. You are to give the right thigh of your fellowship offerings to the priest as a contribution. The son of Aaron, who offers the blood and the fat of the fellowship offering, shall have the right thigh as his share. From the fellowship offerings of the Israelites, I have taken the breast that is waved and the thigh that is presented, and have given them to Aaron the priest and his sons as their perpetual share from the Israelites." So, essentially just breaking down and explaining more of the portions of certain offerings that were set aside as food for the priests is what it seems like. Also, like, wave offering. I don't mean to sound skeptical, but the way it's worded there, like that's a name of a different kind of offering or something, like it almost seems a little bit too, maybe pedantic is a good word there. It's like not every single different variety of thing had to be its own separate category of offering, but that's what this makes it seem like. And I mean, granted, God is God. He has his commands and he has his ways of, naming and referring to the different things. But like, geez. Yeah, I don't know if I really have too much else to say about that. So, I'm going to move along and then kind of wrap up the chapter here. Verse 35. This is the portion of the food offerings presented to the Lord that were allotted to Aaron and his sons on the day they were presented to serve the Lord as priests. On the day they were anointed, the Lord commanded that the Israelites give this to them as their perpetual share for the generations to come. These then are the regulations for the burnt offering, the grain offering, the sin offering, the guilt offering, the ordination offering, and the fellowship offering, which the Lord gave Moses at Mount Sinai, in the desert of Sinai on the day he commanded the Israelites to bring their offerings to the Lord. So, like, I think pretty much everything from Leviticus 1 till this point were all, I mean, the way this is worded, it makes it seem like those were all commands that were given to Moses to tell either all the people or specifically the priests. Like, all that was on the same day. That's what this makes it seem like, anyway. So, yeah. I'm just trying to make sure I didn't have any other particular thoughts related to this stuff. I think verse 36 here just sounds like kind of a fancier way of just saying that, you know, these particular portions that are supposed to be set aside for the priests, like, that's their right from the day that they become priests. Like, the day that they're anointed for service in the temple, that's, from then onward, this is their rightful portion. And that was really, I think, the main way that they were supposed to get their food. Because otherwise they were, like, they were supposed to be working in the tabernacle as priests. They weren't supposed to be spending as much of their time as regular people, you know, taking care of the animals or, you know, harvesting and growing crops and other things like that, because they had their priestly duties to attend to. I'm not saying they never did that other stuff, but they didn't have as much time as the other people of, you know, the group of Israelites to do that other common stuff. But they definitely did have their own stuff, because it mentions offerings that the priests are supposed to give for various things as well. So it wasn't like they had absolutely nothing, but still, that was all this stuff, all this food that went to the priests from these offerings was supposed to kind of help offset, you know, the things that they could otherwise have for themselves from their own, you know, livestock and other goods, but they just didn't have as much time or even as many resources possibly because of serving God. But anyway, I think that's all I've got to say regarding Leviticus 7 here. All right, so that's going to do it for now. Basically, you know, we got more stuff about what the priests are supposed to get from the various offerings, like which portions are supposed to be set aside as food for them. Also, some things not to eat, and a little bit about like being unclean, whether it's the food being unclean or the priests or whoever eats of this food being unclean. Either way, bad things, few things to avoid mentioned in these verses. But anyway, it seems like we might be moving on from stuff about offerings with the next chapter. Not 100% sure of that, because I didn't really look ahead. But anyway, whatever it is, you know, we'll just have to wait and see, you know, until next time. So, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe and click the bell to get updates when I post new videos. Look down in the description for info on social media pages and all that kind of stuff. And leave comments down below with any thoughts you have. So, that is going to do it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you next time where we'll figure out, if we're done talking about offerings or not. But in any case, till next time, stay cool, people.